Our next speaker is Sister Aisha Khaja. Aisha Khaja holds a BA in French and English and an MA in Education, both from the University of Toronto. She currently works at the Ministry of Children and Youth Services as a Senior Policy Analyst and is the host of the TV show Let the Quran Speak. In addition to her professional positions, Aisha has also been extensively involved in the Toronto Muslim community, having funded Charity Week Canada, a volunteer-led campaign for Islamic relief that unites universities and high schools across Canada to raise funds for orphans and needy children. She currently serves as country support for the Canada team. She is also a former research fellow of the Tessellate Institute and has also delivered a TED Talk on the Canadian Muslim identity, amongst others.
With a lecture titled Unlearn, Unhide, Unveil, Understanding the Muslim Within Us, please welcome Sister Aisha Khaja.
Assalamu alaikum. So I told Imam Yasin as he was walking back that he set the bar way too high, so maybe I should have said no to the accents because I don't know many accents, but we'll try. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Wow, that light is really blinding, but that's okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. O my Lord, open my chest for me, make it my task easy for me, and untie the knot, literally, from my tongue so that they may understand my speech. So, I was hearing Imam Yasin talk and he said, it's cool to be Muslim. And I agree, it is very cool to be Muslim, but I have to say, when Imam Mustafa reached out to me and mashallah, an esteemed, number of guests and speakers, I thought to myself, what on earth am I going to offer this crowd? And he said, talk about your story and what motivates you to be successful. And the truth is, I would say up until about 10 years ago, I don't know if I really felt cool to be Muslim or I was pride in my Muslim identity, let alone being Canadian. So I know what you're all thinking. Aisha, I thought that was years ago. I am kind of old. What about now? How many of you think it's scary right now to be a Muslim? No? Wow. Oh, I see a couple of hands. Okay, good. Yeah, I agree. I think we're living in very scary times to a certain extent. I don't know about all of you, but everything that's going on in the United States, this whole idea about establishing a Muslim registry, or the rise and validation of white supremacy, that's not just happening in the United States, it's happening right here in Toronto. I don't know if many of you heard a couple of weeks ago that we actually found posters in one of the communities in Toronto talking about white supremacy. So the reality is it is a very difficult time, and I see a lot of articles on social media about what happened to the Jews and what happened in World War II and all of that, those history lessons, they're coming back, and it's actually really scary. And to be honest, it's kind of messing with me. So, when the election night in the United States, my sister came over and we were all like, no, there's no way Trump's going to win. Who's going to vote for him? And I remember we were all sitting down and she was like, oh my God, Trump is actually winning. Anyways, everyone left. I tried to sleep. I got up 3 times in my night thinking, did he win? Did he win? I got up in the morning, lo and behold, Trump won. So I took a couple of moments to gather myself together. I told my husband on the way to work, I said, don't talk to me. I need to call my sister. So I have another sister that lives in Florida. So I call her. She picks up very calm. She's like, hey, assalamu alaikum, what's up? 7:30 a.m. in the morning. I was like, walaikum salam, what do you mean, what's up? Did you hear the news? Trump won. He won. Are you sending the girls to school? Are you letting them wear hijab? And are you sure it's safe for them to go to school? What is wrong with you? How are you so calm? I literally said that a lot faster. I'm toning it down so you guys can understand. She paused. She's older than me, so she has more composure than I do. She let me catch my breath, and you know what she said? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was with us. Can you relax? Calm down. Is that why you called me? I have to get the girls ready for school. Gotta go. Bye. Click. I kid you not, that was the end of that conversation. And as I was reflecting, as I was writing this talk, what verse came to mind? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter 3, verse 173, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is sufficient for us, and verily He is the best of disposers for all of our affairs. So, let's stop and reflect on this for a second. My sister lives in a town in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, which is quite, I think it's more of a white town than all of Florida. It's a Trump state, and she has 3 daughters, 2 of them who wear hijab, 10 and 4, and if you tell them not to, they will probably throw temper tantrums, and my parents will attest to that because they just went to visit them. And all my sister said, despite of all of this, and she's living in the United States of America, all she said was, have faith, God will get us through this. In a narration by Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said the same dua when he was about to be thrown into the fire. What did God do? He made the fire cool for him. And we have verification of this again in the Quran, chapter 21, verse 69 to 70. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, O fire, be you coolness and safety for Ibrahim alayhi salam. And they warned him, and they wanted to harm him, but we made them the worst of losers. So why am I telling you all about, we live in Canada, why am I telling you about what's happening in the United States, what happened to my sister, what verse it reminds me of? Because my dear brothers and sisters, it is when I found faith that I truly started embracing my identity as a Canadian Muslim, that I truly found success not only in my education, but my career, and I also had the sense of confidence that Imam Yassin was talking about, that I am a Canadian Muslim. And it all started with faith. So let me take you back. I was born and raised in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. I was so I grew up in a Muslim area. I remember, from our house, we could actually see the masjid. You would hear the adhan every day, 5 times a day. The niqab and the abaya were cool things. So this is sort of, Islam in a culture. It was cool to be Muslim because obviously that's what I knew. I remember I used to play dress up with all of my mom's abayas and heels, which would be ripped half the time when she'd find them, and I would just run and hide. Islam was more than the religion, because of where I grew up, it was culture. That was the norm for me because I didn't know any different. When we moved to Canada, I was 9. I continued about, I have 2 older sisters, and I used them as role models, and my parents, as my guides. So I continued to wear the headscarf to school. I knew my parents taught me we had to eat halal meat, so I did that. I would pray because, again, that's what my parents taught me, and that was normal to me, right? That was what I knew. But my normal was soon to be questioned. So I remember in grade 6, this friend of mine, who's, alhamdulillah, still a very good friend, she looked at me and she asked me, she was like, so, why do you wear that? Does your dad force you? And I looked at her and I was like, no. Why would he force me? What kind of a question is that? And so, I left it at that. But reflecting back now, I didn't really understand hijab and the idea of modesty to the point that I could truly, properly articulate myself. Another grade 6 girl, I don't know what was happening with grade 6 girls then. Another one, I remember we were walking, there was this big park, so her and I were walking to school. And she was like, so what kind of a Muslim are you? And I was like, I don't know, what kind of a question is that? What do you mean, what kind of a Muslim am I? And she's like, no, I mean like, are you a Sunni? Are you a Shia? I was like, I don't know, I'm Muslim. Let's go to school. And I remember coming back and, asking my parents, and then they explained it to me and all of that stuff. In grade 7 and 8, I remember, my parents, taught us the importance about praying 5 times a day, and that you'll be sinned if you don't pray, etc. So my mom said, make sure you ask at school and make time to pray. My parents are here, so I don't know if I should confess this, but I'm going to. A car ride home might be a little scary, but that's okay. So I didn't know how to ask, to be honest. And now that I think about it, I don't know why I didn't ask my sisters. But I didn't know how to ask a teacher, can I have some space to pray? Because I had Muslim friends, but that subject never came up and no one prayed. So I actually never ended up asking anybody. And you know what I would do? I would go outside. There are portables in winter. I think they still have portables at school, but I would go out in the winter and pretty much pray speedy cold prayers. I don't recommend that to anyone, so don't do that. But see, the problem that I'm trying to highlight is I didn't know who I was as a Muslim. I did things because that's what I knew, that's what I was taught. And my parents and siblings, again, our parents and our families do lay a very strong foundation. But when it came to me and understanding my Canadian identity in the schoolyard where there were different cultures, people of different religions, I was at a loss. I was a Muslim by name, I was a Muslim by practice, but trying to meld it with my Canadian identity, with all of the questions, it didn't really work. I'll pass over my terrible middle school years where I was a brat, and I won't go to that. I'll fast forward to university. I was very active. I joined the student government, and at this stage, the crowd that I hung out with, they used to be part of the MSA, etc. So, I would attend like Islamic classes in the MSAs, and I don't know if I did it for myself more than I did it for this idea of being cool, because that's what all the cool kids were doing. So I tried to revive my spirit. I was engaged in those classes, but to be honest, I don't think it wasn't a priority for me. And every time I did that, God, sort of pulled me back. So I remember I was in a meeting with the vice dean at the time, and I can't remember what we were talking about, something about, academic final exams and having a fall break. Somehow the conversation came to Islam and Aisha, because I wore an abaya at the time and a headscarf. And he looked at me and was like, "So Aisha, why do you wear this?" My sisters still make fun of me to this day, actually my entire family. I looked at him and I said it with this down tone. I was like, "I don't know, it's like a modesty thing, So yeah, that's it." And then I changed the subject. That actually was my answer. So that year was one of the most difficult years of my life, in that there were a lot of politics. I felt like I had no social life. Spiritually, I felt like I was failing. I would pray, but I didn't really feel my prayers. It was like, okay, I need to pray, and then I need to go to this meeting. I didn't have any concentration in my prayers. Even Ramadan, it was kind of just a social thing where I'd pray, you'd go to the Hajj, I'd go along, but I didn't really feel connected. What was the problem? The problem was that I was hiding the Muslim inside of me. I had adopted my Canadian identity, to the extent that, I went to university, I had seen my good grades, I was involved in the community, I looked Muslim. So to the outside world, yeah, I seemed like I was a very successful Canadian Muslim, but inside I was failing and I was struggling, and I knew I needed to get back up. What do I mean by I need to get back up? I needed to unlearn Islam in a sense of really understanding why we do the things that we do. Why do we pray 5 times a day? What is so important about reciting Surah Fatiha 5 times a day, every single day? I needed to unhide. I needed to embrace my identity as a Muslim and be strong and confident enough to be able to speak about Islam to the best of my ability. Not for an entire Muslim ummah, and I just want to clarify, I've come across so many Muslims, myself included at one point, where I would be nervous because, I look Muslim, so someone's going to ask me, and then, oh my God, I'm going to be the spokesperson for the entire Muslim community in Islam. No, you're not. You are speaking for yourself, and that is it. So I wanted to unhide and recreate my identity and learn Islam so that I could speak about Islam based on my knowledge and based on the people that I interacted with. I didn't need a spokesperson. I didn't need to be the spokesperson for Islam because I didn't want to be the spokesperson. And none of us really have to be the spokespersons of Islam. But what we do have to do is understand Islam enough so that we can be able to confidently speak about it. Because once you learn and once you start talking, that's how that confidence will come about. And this is where my journey began, to unlearn and unhide so I could truly embrace my Muslim identity. There's a hadith Qudsi in Sahih Bukhari where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "I am as my servant thinks of me." I mention him when he mentions me. If he mentions me in an assembly, I mention him in an assembly greater than that. If he draws near to me a hand's length, right, this is your hand, I draw near to him an arm's length. Like, look at that, right? You take an inch, God gives you 10 billion inches. That's not in the hadith, that's me adding to it. And if he comes to me walking, I come to him running. This is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. You know, if you start learning his names, you'll remember that he is always ready to accept. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is As-Salam, the source of peace. Al-Ghaffar, the forgiver. And Al-Latif, the gentle. This is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. How can we not turn back? And so, you know, I began to rediscover my faith. I started enrolling in online courses to learn more about Islam. I took a course through Bayina TV with Noman Ali Khan about this idea of hijab and learning how hijab is not limited to what I wear on my head, but rather it's my entire being and the way I choose to dress. In the words of Dawood Hornsby, who I'm sure you all know, this hijab is a mark of piety, an act of faith, a symbol for all the world to see, to preserve her dignity. I used all of my mediums, you know. I didn't just listen to lectures, I listened to nasheeds, and I enjoyed learning. I know for all of you young ones in the crowd, you know, I went through that phase too where parents would drag you to lectures and you'd be like, oh my God, I'm giving up my weekend to go to a lecture, fun. But I'm telling you, once you start, you know, truly searching for Islam and learning things on your own, it will be exciting. And mashallah, we have, you know, a lot of scholars nowadays. They're on social media as well. There's a lot that you can learn and you have access to a lot. You know, I also took a course about prayer, right? Why do we, for example, you know, what is it about the way we pray, the things that we say, Allahu Akbar, all of that, what does that mean? I'm telling you, it makes the world of a difference. I know it sounds abstract right now because people said the same thing to me and I was like, all right, okay, I'm going to take a course on prayer when I get around to it. But I'm telling you, you have to do it for yourself and you will see the difference. I think the biggest and most meaningful change for me was when I started reading the Quran every day on my commute to school and work, although I have to confess lately I haven't. But I'm trying to get back at it. Even if it's for 5 minutes or literally one line. I remember listening to a lecture once where the sheikh said, open a page. Absolutely any page, take out your Quran and open up any page and you will see that the Quran and whatever verse you come across, it will speak to you. For example, I was writing this talk at 12:04 a.m. just this past Friday, and I opened up the Quran to test this, and the verses that I came across, chapter 39, verse 1 to 2, the revelation of this book is from Allah, the Almighty, All-Wise. Verily, we sent down the book to you, O Muhammad, in truth. So worship Allah alone by doing religious deeds sincerely for Allah's sake only. I promise this was not staged, I didn't find this myself, but I just spoke to you about intentions and having faith in him, and that is what we found. Let's be clear here. I'm not saying my life became perfect. I continue to face struggles and challenges just like we all do, but that is the nature of this life. Because God tells us that in the Quran where he says that, and certainly we shall test you with something of fear, something of hunger, loss of wealth, lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to those who are as-sabirun, patient. He is going to test us, like Imam Yasin talked about. He's going to test the nations that came before us. He's going to test us right now, and he's going to test the ones after us. But as long as we are patient, inshallah, we will be successful. So you might be wondering, so Aisha, did you ever really unveil in terms of sharing Islam and being able to express your confidence in your identity? And I can tell you, alhamdulillah, without an ounce of doubt in my heart, that this is true. Okay, 2 minutes. All right, let me speed through this. So, you know, alhamdulillah, the accomplishments that I've had has been a result of the sense of confidence in my faith. I'm not saying that, you know, I haven't had setbacks. Actually, just recently, you know, I applied to this thing and I didn't get it. I had a lot of difficulty finding a suitable partner, and my parents will attest to that because I drove them crazy. But again, it always brought me back to the Quran. You know, one quick verse, Surah 94, verse 5 to 6. Verily, along with every hardship, there is relief. Verily, along with every hardship, there is relief. That is, if there's one hardship, then you get two reliefs. So one hardship can overcome two reliefs. I'm a living example of a Canadian Muslim who, through faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has been able to become proud both of the fact that I'm Canadian and I'm Muslim. So just, you know, I would say that I didn't start becoming successful because I got into X university or I got this X job or I got this X opportunity. It all began with faith. Once you have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will open doors for you. In the 1 minute that I have left, If there's nothing that you've taken away from my talk other than me blabbering, which is possible, I want you to take away these 3 things in 1 minute because Imam Mustafa is staring at me right now. All right, number 1, unlearn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, chapter 13, verse 11, verily Allah will not change the condition of a people until we change ourselves. Take time, even if it's 5 minutes, to learn about Islam. Learn about things like, why do you make sujood in your prayers? What connection does that have to God? Reprogram yourself to truly understand the teachings from your childhood that you've been taught so that you can truly embrace them. Unhide. If people ask you questions about Islam, be brave enough to share the little that you know. You don't have to be an expert. Build confidence by doing the small things. I can give you, just recently when I was working on this talk, I prayed 2 extra rakahs before I started the outline. Alhamdulillah, breezed through. 2 rakahs before I actually did the talk, breezed through. And I used to do this regularly when I had big papers or assignments in university. I am telling you, your faith in God can make the world of a difference in your life. So try it out and unveil. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf said, if I could summarize Islam in 2 statements, it would be worship the Creator and have mercy on the creation. Live Islam and show Islam by your actions, by taking care of your neighbors, and by standing up for issues, not just issues like Islamophobia, but it's our civic responsibility and our Islamic responsibility to stand up and speak against other issues like Black Lives Matter, like that example Imam Yasin talked about where Muhammad Ali, he refused to go to the war because it was against his religious principles. Once you start adopting all of this, I am telling you, it will change your life. I'll wrap up with one final hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, take advantage of the 5 before 5. Your youth before old age. And old age is subjective, so I know there are a lot of old people here as well. Probably shouldn't have said that. But no, age is a very subjective point, right? Your health before your sickness, your wealth before your poverty, and your free time before you are preoccupied, and your life before death. Let's turn back to Islam to guide us in these difficult times so that we can not only become successful Canadian Muslims in this life, but also in the Akhirah, and be able to live up to this hadith and enter Jannah, inshallah. Ameen. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.